Hello there, it's Paul here and welcome everyone. Now in this video I'm going to do a review on the Erbauer EBJ960 biscuit jointer, and this really is probably the main first project I've used this on, so I'm fairly new to this, so at least you're going to see what my initial thoughts are, how easy it is to use. If you've no idea what a biscuit jointer really is, probably the best way for me to explain it is so that you can get your two pieces of wood joined up where you like. And it can also be used for things like strengthening corners. Say for example you're creating a picture frame, things like that. Now what the biscuit jointer does, it puts an arced hole into your wood to hold one of these, which is what they call a biscuit. Now these come in three different sizes. You've got the O, you've got the 10s and the 20s. Now these are all designed for different thicknesses of wood. So for example, the O's there will really range for where your wood is 8 to 12 mil thick. The 10s from 13 to 18 mil thick, which is what I'm using here. And the 20s, which is for wood that it's sort of 19 mil thick upwards. Now you could make your own biscuits, but from what I understand with these, the specialist thing about these is that other than their actual size is that when they take on moisture, say like from your glue, they expand a little bit, so they help to fill that joint as well. So to give an example really of where I'm using this, I have 8 pieces of pallet wood here which I want to glue all up in one piece, and I don't really have the space here to lay them all out to make sure that the surface, as in the top, is as flat as possible. Using the biscuit jointer, if I mark all my holes in there, I can then put the biscuits in, so that at least that way, when the two pieces come together, they're going to be lined up pretty much as it is, and that surface should be flat. Now the other thing I've seen people use these for as well is where you want to, say like, put a board at 45 degrees. Say you're making a unit or something like that, and rather than try and put a piece of wood on the side and try and clamp it all in place while you drill it and screw it, if you actually put biscuit holes down your one piece of wood and in the other side of the wood, you can then drop them in that way and then glue it all in place. So it does have quite a few advantages. So what does this come with? The first thing is really the biscuit jointer. It comes with a 3-meter cable, so it's absolutely brilliant that way. You're not stuck to having to use extension leads everywhere. You should really have a socket probably within reach of wherever you want to use it. The unit itself, you've got a dust port there, and I've only cut probably half a dozen or so of these, and that is rapidly filling up there already. So there's only really 3 adjustments you need to worry about this. One is the angle of this. So in my case, I want to put my joints in the end of the wood, so I'd have it at that angle. So the second adjustment really is the height of where you want the blades to come from, and as you can probably see there, I've got it fairly close because I'm obviously using fairly thin board, and I think that's set at about 8 or 9 mil. You can adjust it from 5 right the way up to 35 mil. So if you need to come in from a board, you can't really come in a long way. If you did that, you'd have to create some other form of a stopper system rather than going from the edge. The other adjustment is this little red knob on the side here, which adjusts for your size of your biscuits you're doing. Now you've got, in actual fact, even though I've said you've got 3 types of biscuits, that I've got is in the 0s, the 10s and the 20s. There's also a manual option on here as well, because you can actually have that blade running up to 14 mil. There is a preset depth stopper on here as well, and I have had some people comment on Screwfix's website say that they did have to adjust this themselves, and it was a real pain to do. But so far where I've used this, I've only used it on the 20 so far, and these 10s that I've tested so far seem to be okay as well for depth. For power, you've actually got a slide switch on the top here, which is nice and handy and to use. It's just a case of sliding it forward and it locks in place. And to release it, you just push down on it, so it's quick and easy to come off. And the good thing is, because it does lock on, at least if you've got several to do, you don't have to keep holding it down all the time. Now there is a handle on the top here, now which, if you've got your piece of wood clamped down, then this handle is going to come in handy, because you can place it on your piece, and I'm just going to use this on my table here. You can hold it on your piece, and then at least with your handle there you can push the whole thing in. But because I'm doing lots of little individual pieces of wood, this is easy enough to hold in one hand, so I can make sure that when I've got this lined up where I want to put this cut, I can hold the faceplate down flat to make sure I've got it flat and slide the thing in one-handed. I still have all the original packaging, and the first thing, which is really handy to start with, because this is a tool you're probably not going to use very often, you've got a really good strong plastic storage box. And in here it's quite basic. The tool fits in there. You've got the spanner for taking the blade out if you really need to. How easy that is, I don't know. I suspect for the amount I will use this, I will probably never have to take it out. And you've got all your instruction manual in there as well, so it does fit in there nicely. Now, when I bought this from Screwfix, this actually came inside this cardboard box, so you've got the handle out there. And for some reason I've still kept it. There's no need for me to keep it, but again, you can see on here the specs. So we're 860 watts, 3 meter corded cable, and it does 0 to 14 millimeter on the depth of cut. You can change your angle from 0 to 90 degrees, and the height adjustment 5 to 35 mil. And included in it should be obviously the unit itself, the dust collector bag, and the spanner. The other thing, as I can see on here as well, which I hadn't seen before, was speed white 1100 RPM, and obviously it's 220 to 240 volt for what I'm using here in the UK. It isn't the most quietest of things, but it's not really noisy, because again, it's not something you're going to constantly have on the go all the time. With a lot of my reviews, I often use a decibel meter, which is on my iPhone, just to give you an idea of what it's like. It's your choice whether you need to use hearing protection. I mean, certainly I would recommend it if you're ever in doubt. So that's just got up there to about 98, 99 decibels, and obviously I've got this fairly close, and it wasn't really doing the workload, so again it might be slightly different when we do the work. So I'll bring the camera in just a bit closer so that you can actually see how this actually works. Now I'm going to leave my decibel meter running here as well, so we can just see what this does, sort of down lower here. And I've got two boards here, which is where I want to join them together. And the idea, as I said, is you hold your boards into place where you want them joined together, and you put a line across both boards, which is what I've done there. Once I've got that line, this red line here and the red line here is what you have to line up with your line. So I need to line it up with that mark I've done. And it's just make sure I've got this nice and flat on here so it's not loose. Switch it on and slide the blade in. It's that simple. Now I've also noticed on here, I mean this is right next to it, I was getting levels up there about 105 decibels, so it is quite loud, and I certainly would recommend that if you're using this very much, put on some ear protection. Now what I've also noticed as well when I do this is that I'm getting some scorch marks on the wood. Now that could be because of the wood I'm using, or it could just be the way I'm using this, so I'm not sure, but hopefully that won't cause me any issues. So as you'll see, I'll quickly just do another one here. I'll line this one up with the pencil mark I put on here. Make sure it's on nice and flat. And that's that one done as well. So that's how quick and easy it is to do. So hopefully you can see it's quick and easy to use, almost one-handed really. And hopefully you can see here now is where I've done some of these previous ones. those two would line up there. I would drop my biscuit in there. I'd put another one in there. Obviously, once I've done all my gluing, put them together, make sure your holes are lined up, and that really is nice and smooth on there. So it's going to need minimal sanding when I actually glue all these together. I really obviously cannot comment on reliability. I can only really comment on how easy it is to use. My only real concern at the moment that I'm having with this is those scorch marks in there. Now, I've just used the biscuit jointer to effectively use on these two lots of pallet wood, and I've got 8 pieces on each of these, and I've made up 2 of them. And I've got to say, wherever I've put the joints for the biscuit, everywhere there is literally totally flat. 2 things also on this. When you're using this, the one thing I found as well is that you've got these air vents on the top here, which is obviously where the airflow runs through to cool the motor. Because you'll tend to look over the top here, that's probably one place where you get hit with the air, and it's just annoying more than anything. So it's just something to get used to. On both of these, I've actually just used 14 biscuits, but when I did the second one of this, I think I did 1 hole, then I emptied the bag, and I thought, well, I'll try and give an example of how much is in the bag. So doing holes for 13 biscuits, this is, I've got to say, it's getting fairly full. You wouldn't want to do that many more before you certainly empty this. So it does catch an awful lot of the dust, and it does build up fairly quickly. Emptying the bag isn't too much of a problem. It's just take it off. There is a little zip on the back here, and then you can just tip out all the contents. So now that I've actually finished my project on this, with this one, I can just show you a bit more of how this adjusts. So the angle for where you want your hole on here is just done with the locking nut there to set it at whatever you like. How accurate this gauge is, I don't know. I would certainly check it every time I want to use it anyway. But again, if you lock that on 45 degrees, I suspect that if it's 1 or 2 degrees out, you're probably not going to bother that much anyway, because the whole point is lining it up with the 2 pieces of wood anyway. So adjusting the height on this as well, on this side you've got another locking nut, and that's where you can adjust the height on here. And it's supposed to go up to there, which is ideally, which is about 35mm, and the lowest it goes down to on there is 5mm. So it has quite a range on there. Now the selection nut for, depending on what size biscuits you're using, is this dial here, and it's clearly marked on there with your 10, your 20, your manual and your 0. And I did find when I was using this, and I did have to keep an eye on it, because the 10 doesn't click into place really well. So it might just be a case that I just need to just tighten the screw up a little bit in there. But the rest of these sort of click in well. So it's just something you probably need to keep an eye on, because you don't really want this jumping out of the size you're doing to go to a larger size and then finding out you're cutting out bigger holes than you need. It isn't the lightest of things, but again, you don't probably want anything too light, because at least when you're got it on your work to do the cuts, you want some weight there so that at least it will cut out any vibrations. Now, I've just looked at the specs on this on Screwfixer's website, and the only probably thing that I haven't quoted on here, which they already which was listed on there, it comes with a 2-year guarantee, which is pretty good, especially for something that you might not get a massive amount of use of. It's a brushed motor, which the brushes are replaceable, and the weight, oddly enough, they've listed as 5 kilos. Now that doesn't feel like 5 kilos to me. I mean, maybe 2 to 3, but they are listed as 5 kilos. But it just seems easy enough to handle. Now the price that Screwfix are listing currently on their website, as we are now, which is April 2020, they're listing this at £60. So I hope this has been of use to you, and thanks a lot for watching.